Welcome back to Mason-Dixon Acres. It's a wonderful fall evening here on the farm, and this week's video is going to be a little bit different than the ones we've published in the past because the project at hand is actually already done. It's right behind me here, and it wasn't just a couple weekend project like I usually get into. This took me all summer of 2019, so I thought it'd be worthwhile to do a video on it and talk a little bit more about it. We are Alex and Elena, a couple in our mid-20s working towards financial independence and self-sustainability.
Follow our journey as we grow, build, fix, and learn the skills we need to get us there.
Before we get too far into it, I wanted to mention that all the footage I have for this was taken long before our YouTube channel was ever even in our thoughts. So it's pretty much all just pictures and videos that I took randomly with my phone. I'm just going to voice over it and explain the project the best I can, so bear with me.
The beginnings of this project started long before I was born. This barn is actually not the original one to the farm. It burnt down originally and was rebuilt, finished in 1949. And when they did the roof on the rebuilt version, they didn't use the same quality Delta slate that was on our house and smokehouse. They used a different, much thinner, more brittle slate. And over the years, it deteriorated pretty substantially, and especially in this southwest facing corner that you're seeing right now, which led to plenty of leaking throughout the past several decades. In 2016, we actually had the whole back half of the barn stripped of its slate and replaced with metal, but unfortunately a lot of the damage was already done. During 2018, I started formulating my plan on how I was going to fix the structure. I coincidentally had a grad school class at the time for computer-aided design, and I used my final project as an opportunity to do a full computer model of the barn, complete with material properties. And using this model, I figured out that the weight at the corner of the barn was only about 10,000 pounds, which let me know that the jacks I needed to use to support the structure didn't need to be anything special. In October of 2018, I took a visit to the local sawmill and got the first round of lumber I needed. The beams are 10 by 10 inch red oak, and here's a shot of my poor truck trying to tow that first load back. In May of 2019, I started stripping the siding off to get a good assessment of the damage. The corner of the barn sagged about 4 inches, I would say, and I'm honestly surprised it was holding up as well as it was for how little solid wood was left in this corner.
A couple Amish repairs had been attempted throughout the years, but nothing substantial enough to save this. It was just too far gone. The entire lower substructure was completely shot, and the ends of the beams that were touching it were also shot, up to about 3 foot in. I started by putting up this temporary support beam made out of a 6x6, just a few feet inwards from the structure, and I supported it with 3 posts with a 20-ton jack on top of each. I also cut out the structure in the top to get rid of all the rotten portions. I knew I was going to have to splice new ends on all these beams at the end. And I also put some supports on the inside of the barn to support the upper structure on top of where my lower beam was. I ordered the remaining lumber I needed from the sawmill, and my buddies Will and Jimmy helped use their trailer to get all the lumber back to the farm where I could work with it. I also had this 3/16 inch steel plate cut out for me. I tried to get the holes punched in advance, but they didn't quite match up, so I had to do a lot of match drilling. This is when I knocked out the old substructure and I was jacking the building up so that it was level, and then I used this string to measure down to the footers so I knew where I needed to cut the columns that I had just put on this substructure. But I eventually got the whole lower substructure assembled. I was able to borrow the bigger tractor from the orchard that I used to work at when I was a kid. My boss was very gracious and let me use that to lift the whole thing off the trailer one piece and basically place it where I needed to inside the structure of the barn. I spliced the 20-foot long top piece in with the existing using a half-lap joint and then bolted it both vertically and horizontally. I used sort of the same method on the beam ends that I had to splice on, using the steel plate on the outsides with a 12-inch through bolt all the way through, so everything was in double shear and was going to stay strong throughout the years.
All right, here's Alex tearing up the floorboards. He's tearing up the floorboards to replace these joists. They're all rotted out. And my job is to get all these nails out of these boards. Here's what he's done so far. He's replaced these huge beams, the support structures, because it was all rotted out. And he did this all by himself. I don't know, he's Superman or something. So there's still some work to be done. That needs replaced up there. Same with that beam.
Once I had a good solid lower substructure built, I took out all the rotten joists and started replacing them with all the new ones. These things were really heavy because they were a true 3x8 inch by 12 foot in length, and getting them in place was kind of a pain, but we made it happen.
Once I had the sturdy lower structure in place, I could use that to jack up the upper portion of the structure so I could start replacing the ends of the beams up there.
Some of the beam ends I actually got from old recycled beams that I found around the farm. And as I was putting them in, I had to get a little bit creative using some come-alongs, jacks, pulleys, etc. to kind of get everything plumb level and back in line where it needed to be before I fastened it all back in place. Once I had all of the structure bolted together and I was happy with it, I could finally start putting the siding back on. And this was probably a weekend project in itself, just getting all the right boards I needed and getting all the siding up. Then I turned to the floor. I was able to reuse pretty much all the floorboards that were there in the corner. We had them replaced not too long ago, so they weren't in very bad shape. And a lot of the tongue and groove on the floor nearby had rotted through, so I replaced all that while I was at it.
Here are some shots of the completed project, both inside and out.
Looking back, it's easy for me to see that this is by far the largest project I've ever gotten myself into, just with the sheer magnitude of the size of the beams and the timeline that it took. It was from May to October 2019, and I was working pretty much every free hour that I had during that entire period to get this done. So I'm glad that it's done, and it's cool to look back on, and I think this corner will outlast the rest of the barn for the rest of my life anyway. If you like this video, really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up, share it with a friend, leave a comment below if you think that I could have done something different or what you might have done, and definitely subscribe with notifications. You'll get a video every Saturday night from us at 7 p.m. Eastern. Give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook for daily updates, and until then, we'll see you next time.